Okay, here's a question for everybody out there. What would give you a bigger impact to your happiness? $1,000 right off the bat right now, or $1,000 but only after you first lost $1,000? Which would have a bigger impact on your happiness? In one case, the $1,000 actually made you richer. In the second case, the $1,000 just ended up netting you back to zero. But the answer to this would actually be that second scenario where you get $1,000 after you lost $1,000. Are you confused a little bit? Let me explain it a little bit differently. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how much happiness would me giving you $1 bring you? Now compare that answer to how much sadness losing $1 would actually give you. Usually for most people, the pain of losing $1 is usually greater than the actual, gain or happiness that you get from gaining $1. So usually most people would say, the happiness of gaining $1 would probably bring them, a 7 out of 10. Versus the pain and sadness of losing $1 would probably be somewhere between an 8, 9, sometimes for even some people, a 10 out of 10. And this problem actually poses a whole bunch of other financial issues, and it's also used in a whole bunch of different marketing tricks. And if you stick around, not only will you be able to spot those marketing tricks, but hopefully save some money as well. Hey, what is up guys? This is Larry with Financial Lift, and today I want to talk to you about this whole idea of why gains sometimes can be a smaller impact on your life than losses. And this all, is formally known in behavioral economics as loss aversion. And behavioral economics, all that really is just this field of study kind of comparing or combining psychology as well as economics and financial principles. And this is used in marketing and as well as, it's even used in sports sometimes. So it's actually a really big applicable field of study, but it's kind of, under the radar for most people. See, the way loss aversion kind of works is think about waking up, you're on your way to work and you lost your wallet. You can't find the $100 that was in that wallet. You'd probably be freaking out and pretty upset. And if you're like me, you probably find yourself crying and eating a big bowl of ice cream. Who am I kidding? I probably eat a whole entire container of ice cream. But let's say in a different scenario, you woke up that morning, you looked in your wallet and you found an additional $100 bill, or maybe, a lot of people have this happen where they look in their jeans and they find, a $20 bill. So let's say you found a $100 bill in a pair of jeans you put on. The happiness that would bring would probably be pretty great, but not the same impact that losing your wallet or losing that $100 bill would have on you. That would probably, ruin your week in some cases, versus finding $100 great and all, it brings excitement, but you probably forget about it in a couple of hours. And this whole problem of losses being larger than gains and kind of impacting you differently, it actually relates to a whole bunch of financial bad habits that people have, including gambling. I'll explain that in a second. In fact, behavioral economists actually try to measure the difference, and actually, for the most part, losses tend to be twice as large of an impact on your happiness than gains do to your overall happiness. So twice as large of an impact, that's a huge difference. And just kind of think about this in that scenario where I'm talking about trying to find your wallet and find that $100 bill that you had in your wallet. You would end up tossing your whole entire apartment or house all over the place. You would tear up the couch just in an effort to find that $100 bill or find that wallet. And in some cases, you may even start to show up late for work, right? If I'm on my way to work this morning and I can't find my wallet and I'm trying to find that $100 bill especially, then I may spend hours and hours actually trying to find that wallet, even though I'm going to possibly risk losing my job. And so you begin to actually start to think irrationally just because of that impact of trying to find that $100 bill is so great. Okay, probably a better example that will really drive the point home is if you think about people that make a bet on something, right? If I were to go into a casino, or if I'm trying to make a bet with a friend and I decide, I don't want to lose any more than $100 on this game. Well, let's say I bet $50 and I win $50, right? It's pretty easy for me to just say, all right, that's good enough for me. I quit the game altogether. But let's say I end up playing a game and I make a bet of $50. Once again, my initial thought is that I will not lose any more than $100. If I lose more than $100, I'm out altogether. So what ends up actually happening is I play that first game, I lose the $50, and I'm pretty frustrated about it. So then I bet another $50, and so then now I'm out $100. The rational thing at the beginning would have been to just quit at that point. But what ends up happening to a lot of people is at that point, you start to think, well, how about I, double or nothing pretty much. I'm going to bet $100 and I'll get back to even. Versus you're not thinking about, well, if I lose another $100, now I'm down $200. So that's doubling my losses. So maybe it is better to just, stop betting altogether. But that's just it, right? You're not necessarily thinking rationally when you're in that mindset of losses. You're just thinking about getting back to zero, because if you do win $100, that happiness that's going to bring you, getting back to that zero, is going to be so great, and it's so great in your mind that you begin to think irrationally, and the additional losses of losing another $100 is not as big of a deal as winning that $100 and getting back to zero. And this whole situation, unfortunately, is a sad situation because we see this a lot with people who tend to gamble more and more and make bigger and bigger bets. The whole problem is that they're not necessarily thinking rationally, right? Once they start losing, it's just kind of this downward spiral. And unfortunately, that ends up costing some people thousands of dollars. And if you still don't necessarily believe the point that I'm making here, economists once again have tested this whole idea. Think about it this way. If I decided, I'm going to buy a new t-shirt, and for me, this t-shirt I'm looking at is totally worth $20. It's absolutely worth $20. Well, if I gained, some money and had an additional $20, I would still pay $20 for that shirt, right? But if there's a scenario where I end up losing money right before I was going to make that purchase of that $20 shirt, I may actually second guess that shirt and not necessarily think it's worth it anymore. So that's kind of a good scenario or explanation. It's not quite the exact same as far as loss aversion, but the whole idea is that losing money begins to end up changing your overall mindset, and that's a pretty big deal. So how does this all relate to marketing, and how can I use it to my advantage? Well, a good example of this is you see this in like car dealerships all the time, where they know exactly what buttons to push as far as making you think in a loss aversion type way. So for example, they'll say things like, you better sign up for this car deal or buy this car now because you're going to lose out on the opportunity. You're going to lose out on money if you don't buy this car now. You're going to, end up spending $1,000 more if you wait one more day. And so that's kind of getting you to think about in an irrational way, right? You start thinking about things in a loss aversion type way. So you may think to yourself that, this marketing trick doesn't necessarily apply to you, or that's so obvious. How can it apply to the masses, and apply to all people out there? But there's a reason why marketers use it so much, is because it does work. It kind of just attacks this whole principle of, fear of missing out, or FOMO. It's just kind of attacking that fear response. And that fear is such a powerful motivator compared to saving money, right? I can convince you of a way to save $1,000, and it may sound great and all, but if I spin it a different way and start to say, I'm going to help you avoid losing out on $1,000, then that raises ears, and a lot more people are interested in it. And before I go any further on this, if you like business, economics, or financial news or anything like that, hit that subscribe button. You're going to want to hit it because you don't want to miss out on further videos. So you see what I did there? Right there was kind of a good example of how using that fear response or that loss aversion type idea to your advantage. If I had said something like, hit that subscribe button and you'll benefit from further videos, that may get some people to subscribe. But if I start saying it in a fear-based way, right? If I start saying you're going to miss out on further videos, that may have a greater reception to some people. Now, I bet some people out there are going to actually unsubscribe just in spite of the whole entire idea. Okay, so this is great and all, but how does one beat loss aversion on this whole idea? Well, probably one of the best ways is to basically have some kind of mechanism or principle that will prevent you from breaking your own rules. So for example, if I'm going to bet on a sports game, for example, and I tell my friend, I don't necessarily want to bet any more than $1,000 this weekend. Well, have, them be the kind of end all be all person, right? Give the $1,000 to them if you trust them enough, or give them all your money, for example, or have, them have your credit cards or whatever it is, checkbook. So that way, if you end up wanting to spend more money, the decision is in their hands, right? You ask them, hey, I know I already lost $1,000, but there's an exception here. It's going to be much easier for them to kind of stand their ground than it would be for yourself to stand that ground. Because like I said, once you start losing money, this whole idea of loss aversion makes you start to think irrationally. This whole same principle also works well with stock picking, for example, or day traders out there. And I'm not necessarily advocating it for one way or another, but my whole point is that the most disciplined day traders out there will end up kind of having a hard cutoff as far as the losses that they're going to incur for a day. So if you end up losing $1,000, they'll just shut their computer off altogether, and that works very well. The reason that works well is because there may be one day where you lose $1,000 and that was supposed to be your cutoff, but then you kind of convince yourself otherwise. You say, actually, I think I know what's wrong here. Let me change my strategy up a little bit. And that may work for that one particular day. You actually may end up, losing $1,000 and actually bringing it all the way back up to where you're gaining $200. And so then what ends up happening is you even take bigger risks the next time you lose $1,000. You lose $1,000 and that was supposed to be your cutoff day, but now you make bigger and bigger bets all the way to the point that now you're ended up losing $2,000 or $5,000, and then you end up regretting the whole entire decision. So the key there is to be really financially disciplined and just kind of have that mindset of just cutting off things altogether and sticking to that. So now that we know how to beat loss aversion, how do we benefit from loss aversion? This is somewhat kind of a silly example, and I kind of already talked a little bit about with the whole subscribe thing, where you're kind of framing things in a different way and, you know, causing people to worry about losing out on an opportunity. So the example I probably give is if you're in an interview, for example, and, you know, the interview went well, they make you a job offer, and you want to kind of counter their offer. They offer you, just an example, they say, we'd love to have you on your team. We're going to offer $50,000. You can go back to them and say, hey, I have another offer on the table. I really want to work where you know, at this company. Can you guys do $52,000? You know, that's fair game. You may get that $52,000, you may not. But if you frame it a different way and say, hey, I have another offer, I don't want you guys to lose out on the opportunity for me to work there. Could you guys do $55,000? It's probably a lot better of a chance that you're actually going to get that $55,000 because, you know, companies don't want to lose out. Even HR managers, even companies don't like to lose. So when you phrase it that way, and especially when you're right up there as far as the hiring process being over for them, you know, in their minds, they're thinking, if we lose out on this opportunity, we're going to have to start the process all over again. So it's really a great way to frame that, and that's a great way to benefit from loss aversion. So there you have it as far as how you can benefit from loss aversion, how you can, you know, detect it, and also how you can make sure you don't lose out or lose money because of loss aversion, and that the whole idea of starting to think irrationally once you start to lose money. Hopefully you found this video useful. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. And if you like, you know, these behavioral economic type videos or anything that's kind of dealing with psychology as well as finance, you know, let me know below any kind of other topics you'd be interested in talking about. That's one of the topic areas that I love talking about most. Hit that subscribe button so you can stay tuned for more of those types of videos, and hope to see you in the next one.